readers. My name is Dawn Hughes, and I'm the coordinator for Booktrib's Book Club program. I'm here today with Jackie M. Stebbins, the author of UNWILLABLE, a truly inspiring story of triumph and resilience against a devastating disease. I know that that's a very quick and dirty description, but we don't have a ton of time. So UNWILLABLE is one of the books taking part in Booktrib's Book Club program for August. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your schedule to talk with us, Jackie.
Dawn and Booktrib, thank you so much for having me here.
We're excited. We're excited. Your book sounds so fantastic. I'd love to know what the most fascinating or surprising thing you learned while writing this book. Maybe it was a personal thing I'm sure you learned a lot of personal things, but
So let's see. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about how much anxiety writing your memoir can give you when you're writing about a traumatic event. But I think probably the most fascinating and important thing I learned about writing a book was that writing a book was really hard. And so before this new life I have done in my old life, I was actually a trial lawyer. And that's what I felt called to do since I was a little kid. So I've always been, I think, pretty well read. I love to read. I wrote a lot beginning in high school. Legal writing, I thought came very easy to me and natural. So after I got sick, I learned there was this book about my illness called Brain on Fire, and it was a New York Times #1 bestseller. So being so true to form, stubborn, I thought, well, I'm going to write a book then too. Oh my gosh. Writing a book is not just, sit down and hammer it out. I was, just really floundering for quite a while, trying to do it on my own. And a few friends caught me after I had floundered for about 2 years, and they pulled me back and said, hey, you need to be reading more memoirs. And there's books about writing memoirs and writing classes. And I was like, oh my gosh, who knew this? Everyone on earth, I think, knew that except for me. So once I was reined in a little and given a little direction, I did learn that writing is a craft and there's a reason people study it. And it's just really a beautiful thing. And I learned a lot about myself. I never thought I was creative, but now my writing is my outlet. I think writing saved my life, recovering from my brain illness, autoimmune encephalitis. And I've learned that, you know what, maybe I'm actually kind of creative after all. So writing has been a blessing, and writing a book was very hard to do. And it took me about 3 years.
wow, you started writing this book after a situation where you checked yourself into a hospital because you were overwhelmed with anxiety, which you attributed to being overworked at first. Is there still some element of that? Like, is there a message there for readers about that?
I think the message, if I'd have to suss it down on that question, would be that we're all works in progress, right? So I am still a work in progress. I thought I was having a mental breakdown from burnout as a busy trial lawyer that owned my own practice. Actually, I had a rare brain illness, but it took a while for us to get there. So, but in hindsight, I was working too hard. I was working very recklessly and acting as if I didn't have a central nervous system, and maybe some deep breathing and breaks, would help. So, but we can't change everything about ourselves, right? And along with the good, sometimes comes the bad. So I would say we're all works in progress. And as Kate Bowler says, she's one of my absolute favorites. Everything happens on her podcast when she always talks about, humanity is a chronic condition and there's no cure for being human. So this book has allowed me to explore my humanity so much deeper, but I still am very task oriented and type A and an Enneagram 1. And again, along with the good comes the bad.
Of course, right. It is such a personal book, and it is such a, there's a lot of emotional roller coastering happening in it. Why do you think this book makes such a great choice for a book club selection?
I feel like UNWILLABLE is kind of the right story at the right time. And I know that's a question you want to ask yourself when you start writing a nonfiction or a memoir, why this book, why this time? At the time I started writing, I was 1 year out from my diagnosis with this rare brain illness, and I had truly struggled to stay alive for that 1 year. Not being dramatic. It was very touch and go. I had young children, I had a husband, and I just had to fight to stay alive. And that whole year, all I thought about was writing this book because I really thought it would help others. This illness has gone untreated and misdiagnosed for probably a long, long time. It's a relatively new disease. So I really thought I could help others. And I had the benefit of a fairly quick diagnosis, which probably saved my brain and saved my life. I don't think a lot of people share in that good fortune. But as time has gone on, and Unwillable has gotten further into the world, I think the right time, the right place is now. Our world has changed so much since COVID. And I think people are still struggling with their jobs and where do I belong? Or maybe I didn't like where I worked, or maybe I want to work from home and should I move somewhere else? I mean, we had all these existential questions and we had a lot of anxiety. And I think people realized maybe they were pushing too hard and maybe they needed to stop and slow down and enjoy life a little bit more. And that's where I think Unwillable can speak to all of us. Statistically, most people won't have the brain illness I have. But to go back, we all have humanity. And if humanity is this chronic condition that we're all trying to live with, I think what Unwillable can do for a broader audience is, talk about a reflection of yourself and what do you want out of life, and our goals always good, and what does it mean to dream. And I think just the anxiety after COVID, I still live with a lot of uncertainty in my life and in my health, and maybe just learning how to accept and live with some uncertainty, kind of be more mindful, I think is where Unwillable can benefit. And I feel like that's a really broad message. So I'm hoping all the book clubs that are meeting around the country as school starts will want to pick up Unwillable and say, this is a really uplifting read, and this is the right time to have an uplifting read.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. We're going to shift away from your book a little, because I want to know what the best book that you've read, fiction or otherwise, fiction or nonfiction, in the past year, and why.
Oh, Dawn, that is such a hard question. I feel like the old "can I call a friend?" I would say I read a lot of nonfiction. I love memoirs. I would say I read The Sun Does Shine a couple months ago after I actually met the author, Anthony Ray Hinton. He spoke at a criminal defense seminar. I'm still a licensed attorney in North Dakota, and I participated in that. And I think that was probably the best speech I'd ever heard in my life. I bought his book right away so he could sign it. And at the end, I just told him I wanted to hug him the whole time he spoke. He was wrongfully on death row for 30 years. It was no accident. The system really railroaded him there. And it's so heartbreaking, but his humanity. I know I just actually listened to the podcast he was on with Kate Bowler, and she said it's like a miracle being in his presence. And I can attest to that. So I would highly recommend The Sun Does Shine. And I read that on the heels of Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson.
Yeah.
And Brian Stevenson was the lawyer that was able to finally exonerate Ray Hinton. So to read those two together and think about, mercy and compassion and forgiveness, those books felt very life-changing for me.
Wow. I think I'll add those two to my TBR as well, because I really like true crime and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
anyways, this has been a great discussion. I could probably talk to you all day, but I do need to wrap it up. So thank you for your time. And for more information about Jackie's book, check out the book club page on the booktrib.com website. And of course, get her book for your book clubs. Thank you.